Welcome back to Ben's Book Club. Today we are diving into the book Fire Down Under, Financial Independence, Retire Early in Australia. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the roadmap for anyone who feels totally trapped by that traditional timeline. You know, the one where you just work until you're 67. We're looking at how this massive global movement has been uniquely adapted for us right here in the lucky country, breaking down the exact strategies, local rules, and the actual numbers you need to know.
It's a question so many of us are asking right now, isn't it? I mean, between the crushing weight of that classic 30-year Australian mortgage, ridiculously high living costs, and climbing interest rates, the standard path can feel like an endless, exhausting treadmill. But the book presents FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, as the ultimate escape hatch. It's a strategic framework designed to help you literally reclaim your time. It proves that the great Australian dream doesn't have to equal decades of debt. Actually, it can be about total, absolute freedom.
To get there, the book introduces this fantastic concept called joyful frugality. See, a lot of people hear the word FIRE and immediately picture extreme deprivation, eating nothing but baked beans and giving up your weekend smash davo forever. No way, that's a total myth. Joyful frugality isn't a punishment at all. It's about value-based spending. So instead of asking what you're giving up, you flip the script. You ask, what is this purchase costing me in terms of my actual life hours? It's about strategically questioning that sneaky lifestyle creep every time you get a pay rise, all so you can channel your money toward what actually brings you joy and freedom.
Okay, let's dive into this and break down this massive life goal into 5 logical steps. We'll be looking at the joyful FIRE mindset, calculating your FIRE number, the unique Aussie advantage, the big shares versus property debate, and finally, the ultimate goal, optionality.
All right, step 1, the joyful FIRE mindset, and how we actually utilize value-based spending.
The absolute foundation of this playbook is that your journey to financial independence must be sustainable. If you're miserable, you're just going to burn out and abandon the whole plan, right? It's really about auditing your life, tracking every single dollar, and finding that perfect sweet spot where you're saving aggressively while still actually enjoying your life down under. And here is where the rubber meets the road. The book highlights that your savings rate is actually a way more powerful lever than your investment returns. Boosting your savings rate to an ambitious 50 to 70% of your income is the golden key. To put this into perspective, there's a powerful example in the book. If you're on a $150,000 salary and you manage to save 70% of it, you could theoretically retire in about 10 years. It requires real discipline over perfection, but that super high savings rate is what rapidly accelerates your entire timeline.
Let's keep moving to step 2, calculating your FIRE number using something called the 4% rule.
This is where we transition into the actual mathematics of early retirement. The beauty of this explainer is that it takes this kind of vague dream of retiring early and turns it into a concrete mathematical formula. Knowing your exact target makes the whole journey tangible, giving you a definitive finish line to sprint toward. The book lays out 3 sequential steps to build enough passive income so you can cover your expenses by your 30s, 40s, or 50s. First, you calculate your expenses, which means budgeting pretty ruthlessly to figure out exactly what your ideal life costs. Second, you boost that savings rate by living on a fraction of your income. And third, you invest smartly and consistently, letting compound growth do all the heavy lifting for you over time.
Now, what's really interesting about this math is the 4% rule. This simple formula dictates your entire wealth-building timeline. Basically, it suggests you can safely withdraw 4% of your invested portfolio every single year without ever running out of money. To find your target, you just multiply your annual expenses by 25. Simple, right? Well, the book does note that for more conservative Australian conditions, accounting for inflation and market volatility, you might want to multiply your expenses by up to 33 instead. That gives you a safer 3% withdrawal rate.
So what does that actually look like in real dollars? Well, it really depends on your location and lifestyle. If you're a single individual living in a regional area, your target FIRE number might be a very achievable $500,000 to $800,000. But if you're raising a family in Sydney or Melbourne dealing with those astronomical housing costs, you're probably looking at a target somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million plus. Your number is highly personal. And hey, geo-arbitrage, which basically means moving to a cheaper location, is a totally valid strategy to lower that target.
Moving right along to Section 3, the unique Aussie advantage, looking at our super and tax perks.
Unlike US-based FIRE strategies that constantly talk about 401ks and incredibly high healthcare costs, we have to factor in our specific landscape.
We need to plan around our local tax brackets, managing HECS and HELP education debts while building a nest egg, and of course, the fact that we have Medicare, which fundamentally shifts how we plan for healthcare and early retirement. But we also have a massive, massive advantage: franking credits. Because of our dividend imputation system, companies that have already paid corporate tax pass those tax credits onto you as a shareholder. In simple terms, it means you don't get taxed twice on the exact same profits. The book explains how these tax offsets literally supercharge an investment portfolio's cash flow. It's an incredible tailwind that makes our local share market one of the absolute best places in the entire world for dividend investing.
Then, of course, there is the Australian superannuation system. A lot of young people chasing FIRE completely ignore super because, well, it's locked away until age 60. But the book positions it as a totally vital tool. The strategy here is building what's called a superannuation bridge. You build up accessible investments, like low-cost ETFs or investment bonds, which actually become capital gains tax-free after 10 years, and use those to fund your life from your early retirement date right up until you turn 60. Meanwhile, you're optimizing your super in the background, using strategies like carry-forward concessional contributions to fund the latter half of your life in a super tax-effective way.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next topic. Section 4, Shares versus Property, and where you should park your cash.
Deciding where to park your hard-earned money to reach financial independence is a huge, central theme in the book. Both asset classes present very different pathways to achieving your FIRE number, and the authors offer a really balanced look at both. On one side, you have shares, specifically low-cost ETFs and listed investment companies. These offer high liquidity, low fees, and those beautiful franking credits we just talked about. On the flip side is property. We obviously have a massive cultural obsession here with real estate and the sweet tax benefits of negative gearing. However, the authors clearly warn of a uniquely Australian trap: being property poor. This is where you hold high equity in a home but have absolutely zero cash flow, which, let's be honest, doesn't really help you pay for your groceries if you want to quit your job. The book remains neutral overall, but heavily stresses that passive cash flow is the ultimate goal, no matter which path you choose.
To navigate all of this, the Playbook lists some highly effective, localized strategies. First up is rent-vesting. That's renting where you actually want to live, but buying an investment property where you can afford. Then there's house hacking, like renting out a spare room to help cover the mortgage. Debt recycling is another really cool advanced tactic to turn non-deductible home loan debt into tax-deductible investment debt. And finally, side hustles. Diversifying your income streams is presented as a surefire way to seriously accelerate your exit date from the traditional workforce. And that brings us to our final step, Section 5, the ultimate goal, optionality.
Once the math is done, the spreadsheets are built, and you finally hit that magical FIRE number, what actually happens next? So the crucial point is that FIRE isn't necessarily about sitting on a beach sipping cocktails for 40 years. It's really about optionality. The true dream of FIRE in Australia is about flexibility and semi-retirement. It's having the absolute freedom to just choose your path. Think about the immense psychological relief and the power that comes from being able to say no to a bad boss, or yes to a passion project that pays basically nothing. It's about making life choices based on what you want to do, rather than what you have to do just to survive.
So I really want to leave you with this provocative thought about your own future. What would you actually do if you reached FIRE tomorrow? Seriously, how would you spend your life hours if money was no longer the primary driver? This book proves that with a solid savings rate, smart use of super, and a good understanding of our local tax laws, the Australian dream can absolutely be about freedom rather than a lifetime of debt.
Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating playbook. If you found value in this breakdown, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.